Hello everybody. A while ago, I purchased the micro synth pack from Tracktion Software to run in my Tracktion 7 DAW. Now these instruments were priced very humbly. I think it was $15 for the pair. And upon installing these plugins and using them, I realized there was very little information about them available, either from Tracktion or from other users online. So I decided to throw together a little video to describe these instruments, maybe get into how they operate. I'm not a big synth guy, so I did my best to kind of figure out how these instruments work. Again, no help, no documentation, apart from screenshots on Tracktion's marketplace website. For me, these instruments work. I'm more of an acoustic guy, so when I needed a touch of synthesis on a song or track, these guys definitely were enough for me. I tend to get bogged down when there's too many controls available, so having limited options is not a negative for me so much. We'll get into these instruments and you could see for yourself if this works for you or not. So let's move into analog synth. Now, of course, the name suggests that it is an emulation of an analog synthesizer. So I know a little bit more about analog synthesis than I do about FM synthesis, so this instrument was easier to figure out. But let's get into how it's laid out here. So on the top, you have the presets menu. It's a drop-down menu, drop-down list of about 30, 40 presets. It starts when you open the plugin, starts on the first preset here, 5th sweep pad. And next to the menu, you have up-down arrows for mouse control. If you select the menu, you can move up-down with the, you can browse through the presets with the up-down arrows on the keyboard. Now, right away, you'll notice that there is no option to save presets. Your progress is saved with the project. So if I make a change to a setting here and save the project, when I open the project again, the setting would be the same as I left it before. No way to save these settings specifically. There's no way to A/B two settings. And another issue with the settings is when you press Control on the keyboard and you click a knob, I thought initially this resets the knob to a default position, but no, it actually resets it to the last save of the project. So this brings another preset issue. There is no default sound for analog synth. There is no reset to the basic sound. There's only these presets. Okay. And again, resetting it, just resetting the controls with the control key on the keyboard just puts it back to where the project was saved. I did save it on this 5th sweep pad here, so it goes back to, let's see, 50 minus 6 minus 6.3. So it goes on similarly. I might have made a few changes. Now, another thing that's unclear with the presets, another issue that I was thinking about was whether the oscillators themselves change when you select different presets. Is the waveform for the oscillators, is it changed? I don't know. But let's try to first zero out the controls a little bit. So when you're trying to zero out the controls, you have to do it manually. LFO. Okay, this is as close to it as I can get, I guess. Okay, so let's start at the top at these oscillator controls. The first one on the left is mix. Full left is 100% and 0%. So this knob, this control is a mix control for the two oscillators that this synth has. So 100% of oscillator 1 sounds like this. I'm thinking that it's a sawtooth wave. Not entirely sure. And as we bleed in the other oscillator, not very noticeable here. Let's try to get it. As we bleed in the other oscillator, I guess you can hear that there's a certain decorrelation between these oscillators. And if you hit it at some point, there's like a comb filtering effect. There's this comb filtering effect that maybe just eliminates most of the frequencies. So I'm not entirely sure again how this works. Let's try a cleaner setting. You have to very carefully set it to 0 if you can. Sometimes it kind of skips it. And it switched to a different preset. Okay, so you have the mix knob. And the second oscillator, I really don't know. Really have no idea what it is. I guess you need a high resolution mouse here to get to the really zero out these controls. Okay, so mix knob is at full right. It's 50-50 between the oscillators. I guess. And the other oscillator, maybe it's another sawtooth, maybe it's a square wave. I guess maybe it has a more square attitude. So to the right of the mix knob, there's a tune knob. So this is a tune knob from 2 octaves up to 2 octaves down. And this is the relationship between the oscillators in terms of pitch. So if I take -12 semitones, oscillator 2, yes, oscillator 2. This is tuned for oscillator 2. So as I go to 100%, this is not noticeable. At full 50, more noticeable. Let's get it up. Octave up. Okay, there's what it is. Next to it is fine tune. 50 to -50.1 cent for some reason. So this gives you a quarter note. Detune. Set that back to 0. This goes back again to -6. Next to it is poly or mono. We have poly, legato, mono, legato, mono glide. All these quite self-explanatory if you know a little bit of synthesizers. And as I pull up glide rate and glide back, the pitch slides or glides up or down from the previous key press to the next. The differences between these controls, I'm not entirely sure. Glide rate seems to be the higher it is it's from 0% to 100%. The higher it is, obviously, the longer the glide is. Glide bend. Oh, that's the amount of change, I guess, from from 0. Okay, so this is the oscillator glides up to the key press. Let's see. So 100 is up to down. Let's see if it's a small amount and keep it stuck. And then from 0 to, yes, it's 50 here. From 0 to 50, it goes up. Okay. So now we get this. This is glide, legato. I guess it's a more subtle glide. Oh, I get it. Yeah. So glide is from 0 frequency, or the top frequency, down to the key press. Yes, and legato is from the previous key press to the next. Okay. Good to know. Moving over to the right, the oscillator envelope. It's a standard ADSR envelope. Full attack, 100%. Maybe about 3 seconds. Decay time at 100% is quite substantial. I think it's over 10 seconds for sure. And of course, release, sustain. Used to get a more softer sound and a less sudden one. Another note on the oscillator envelope, or on both of these envelopes actually, the graph on the top is for visualization purposes only. You cannot click and drag these points. Okay, so it's just the controls. So moving on, there's a filter section. The VCF is a high cut filter. There's a resonance control next to it. Depending, I think, on the source material, you can get it to whistle a little bit if it's on 100%, depending on the frequency. Next to it, envelope control from negative 100% to positive 100%. To determine how much control the envelope has on the behavior of the filter. You can invert the envelope, going to negative value. Same deal with the VCF envelope, ADSR. This graph, the points on the graph are non-movable. So next to the envelope, there's LFO. This determines the amount of influence the LFO has from 0% to 100%. This is a So envelope at 0%, yes. Low frequency oscillator. Okay. See, it's a little bit difficult to figure out the relationship between these controls. The results can be a little unpredictable. Next to the LFO, we have velocity control. This is velocity input from the keyboard, from off % to 100%. Pressing the keys at various speeds, the oscillator, the VCF opens up more. Okay. Obviously, this has a certain relationship with the envelope control. When inverted, the velocity, the harder I press the keys, or the faster I press the keys, yes, the more the envelope, or it cuts down quickly. So that's the filter section. Let's move over to the MISC section, which I would more or less call global controls. The LFO controls both the LFO for VCF, for the filter, as well as this vibrato control. So the vibrato control is two types. On the left of the knob is PWM. So 0 is at 12 o'clock. If you can reach it. See, I can't really zero out this control. I need the closest I can get is 0.4%. So 0 is at 12 o'clock if you can find it. To full left is 100% PWM. Full right is 100% pitch vibrato. So let's hear the PWM. Okay, so let's increase the LFO. Faster pulse width modulation vibrato. Pull it on the other side. Is an amount control for pitch vibrato. Let's just check out the full. So this is an amount control for either pulse width modulation between the two oscillators or a global vibrato. Again, so this LFO rate controls both vibrato and LFO for the VCF. So you get basically, three oscillators in this instrument, the two tone oscillators and one LFO. Oh, 0%. Cool. Now this 0% issue brings me to another problem that I've had. Perhaps it was because I haven't yet figured out the instrument and couldn't get it to work properly, but I've had some tuning issues with this where I just couldn't get it to play in tune with everything else and couldn't really find how to get it in tune. Everything was at 0, but still it was out of tune. I'm thinking maybe the vibrato at a very, very low. See, the LFO rate here is 0.018 hertz. So if the vibrato control is not really at 0, like it is now, I should save this actually. If I could save it as a preset, I would. So if it's not exactly 0, it will give you a very, very slight pitch alteration. And I think, thinking back, this is what I experienced, a pitch difference where the pitch was just kind of sailing around. And I can hear it, of course. It was big enough for me to hear. It was big enough for me to be upset about it, but I couldn't really figure it out. So that's where it is. Oh, correction. There's two tone oscillators and then an LFO oscillator and a noise generator. So let's hear the noise. From 0 to 100%. And I believe this can be filtered by the envelope. So let's see what that sounds like. Yes, so the noise generator is pre-filtered. So you can get the filter to act on this. This is probably where you get a good whistle going with the resonance control. So that's the noise, and two global tuning controls, octave from -2 to +2, and a global tuning from 100 cent to -100 cent, so that gives you a half tone to play with in case you need to change the tuning of the whole instrument. And this is the last control that we have on the bottom here. Is standard keyboard for instruments. If you're a mouse operator, you will find that clicking the top of the keys is a lower velocity, clicking the bottom of the keys is the highest velocity. You also have the ability to change the range of the keyboard here with these arrow keys on the sides. And that's pretty much it. Other issues that I've discovered: no pedal control for this instrument. So I'm depressing the pedal with my foot, and nothing doesn't change the sound, or doesn't sustain the sound. Also, pitch control, no effect, and modulation control on the keyboard, also no effect. So bear that in mind. There really aren't any playing controls that you can use to modify your performance with. And generally, the character of the synthesizer, to me, it sounds a little cold. But overall, I enjoyed playing it. So let's move on to FM Synth. Let's pull that up. Okay, so FM Synth. Same preset section up on top. Fewer presets here. The FM same preset controls. You can use the keyboard to change presets or these arrow keys. Here, no saving presets, no full reset. And moving into a big envelope window here, again, the graph doesn't respond to any clicks. It's the controls down here that do. I've found this section to be the most useful one. You'll find out in a minute. This is an attack, decay, release envelope, no sustain even. This occupies half of the real estate here on the interface. And moving on to the other controls, MISC section, vibrato. Let's see what this sounds like. So it's 0 to 100%. Let's see if it's affected by the LFO rate. I'm guessing that it is. Yes, it is. Okay, that's nice to know. There's no clear relationship between them. If you look at this GUI, there's really no clear relationship between them. So, and the mount control for, so the vibrato control is an amount control from 0 to 100% of pitch vibrato for this instrument. There's no carrier modulator direct control here. There's no changing the waveforms. Again, not sure whether clicking on different presets pulls up different waveforms here to be modified, or changes the carrier, or changes the, I don't know what the oscillators here, what they're set to, or they have set sounds. Does this change between presets? I did try to change the controls to get different sounds. That tends to have varying degrees of success, since again the correlation between these controls isn't clear. So sometimes you get extreme results, sometimes you get very subtle results. But let's move beyond vibrato to octave, from -3 to +3.9. Sounds like a global pitch control, even though it was set to 45. So I'm not sure what 45 is. Is this, see, this is but non-integer values. What is the point here? Again, very difficult to zero this out. Next to it, there's a fine tune from -100 to 100 cent. So you have a half tone difference to play with here. Yeah, still global tune. This controls the output pitch. I'm really puzzled by this octave control. I mean, why is it not? If it's a global control, why is it not -1, 2, 3 or positive 1, 2, 3 and 0? So I can't even really get to 0. So am I out of tune here? Is this 0.02 octaves? Okay, I don't know. So let's move on. There's a waveform control from 0 to 100%. What does this do? I really don't know. It's again, depending on the preset, gives you subtle results or extreme results. Is it controlled by the LFO rate? I don't think so. No. I mean, is it? I'm hearing like a frequency. I'm hearing a filtering effect. But with this other preset, works differently. So, okay. So this I'm not entirely sure what this waveform control does. Moving on to modulation, we have coarse, which is this is I guess the ratio control between the carrier and the modulator. We have 0 ratio between the two oscillators at full left, and then all the way up to 40 full right. And again, I'm not a big synth guy, but I understand that the ratio between the oscillators determines the character of the sound. So this has more like high-pitch artifacts to it. So with next to the coarse control, there is, let's try the zeros at 28. Okay, really? So this is 20. Next to the coarse control, sitar. Next to the coarse control, there's a fine control. So again, splitting the ratio into even decorrelating the ratio between carrier modulator with these small amounts of variance gives you even more effed up results. Velocity. Not sure what that does. Velocity from 0 to 100%. What does it do? Doesn't seem to do much. Not in this preset. I don't hear a difference. Through control, through what? Maybe sort of a bleed control for the modulator. The more of this you bleed in, I guess, the more noticeable the modulation will be. Depending on of course, the settings you set here for coarse and fine. And again, this waveform control, maybe it should have been here, because that seems to be more like something that should be in the modulation section, or not a MISC section, but I guess maybe I'm not. I still don't understand exactly what it does. So through control, velocity. Velocity could be the velocity of this and this is the final section, the modulation section, or the modulation envelope here. So maybe this has something to do with the modulation envelope, which has init, decay, sustain, and release. Init, why init and not attack? Not sure. Maybe it's something of a glide control between or you know, maybe this envelope controls, like, the modulator starts at a certain pitch and then moves to the pitch that you set with the modulation controls here. I'm really not sure. Really not sure. And then maybe the velocity controls the speed with which this happens. I'm not sure. Not sure what goes on here. So more things hidden than there are explained in this FM synth. Having said that, and you can look at the various presets here. Another thing I wanted to say about analog synth as well, that most of the presets are indeed based on real instruments, and there's very little here. There's a few percussions. And an effect. Most of the presets are based on instruments, and they're not ambient sounds, they're not special effect sounds, even though there's a few there. So I'm guessing this is what they were aiming for. And for the character, the general character of this instrument, the FM synth, is, to my ears, even a little warmer than analog synth, which is surprising because you'd expect it to be the other way around. But I've found especially these keyboard sounds to be quite useful, and again, surprisingly warm. And again, what I was going for in the beginning is tweaking the envelope here was really the most useful for me. I just pick one of these keyboard sounds and space them out a little bit with softer attack and longer release, and really leave the other controls where they are. Again, wasn't sure exactly what I was doing when playing around with them. Maybe this is a lack of knowledge on my part on FM synthesis. But again, a little bit more help on these controls would have been nice. Maybe more of a flow chart with highlighting which controls affect which. Again, generally figuring out what happens with these presets, maybe a basic default preset that you can edit would have been nice. So this is my rundown of these two instruments. Generally, I enjoyed using them, and I'm sure I still will. So there you go. The micro synth pack from Tracktion.